What do gasoline, lipstick, a hamburger, and a pair of shoes all have in common? We know what they cost, along with the hundreds of other things we need or want, important or not. But when it comes to something we need to stay alive, day after day, we have no idea what it costs, or more importantly, what it's worth. What is the value of water? It's a simple question that's very hard to answer.
Your Honor, I think those dates will work. I've got a secondary calendar I'd like to check.
Hold on a second. Well, hi there.
Excuse me, do you know how much this is worth?
What is this?
Water.
Just water?
Yes.
I'm sorry, kids, I don't know.
Thank you.
Most of us don't think of water as having any real value, in dollars or anything else. In fact, most of us don't think about water at all. But unless we learn what water is really worth and start treating it that way,
No, I really don't know.
before long, water could be worth its weight in gold.
Americans are spoiled when it comes to water. They just take it all for granted. You turn the tap, it's there, it's safe to drink. Turn on the sprinkler, it works. They're not paying for the true costs of what water costs us in terms of environmental consequences if we overexploit the resource or we foul it with our waste.
The paradigm shift that I think we need is to stop looking at water as a free resource and a free good, and we need to look at it in its more economic values. And water has different values and different uses. It has values in different times and different spaces. When you're thirsty, you'll pay $3.50 to buy a bottle of bottled water. And you go home and turn on your tap, you probably aren't going to be willing to pay $3.50 when it's right there. So people are willing to pay very high values to provide for drinking water, to provide for sanitation, to take care of their health needs. They're not willing to pay as much necessarily for water to wash their car. And so economists look and try to capture that entire willingness to pay for water that goes over values in all uses, values for drinking, values for swimming, values for boating. And a willingness to pay for these different uses of water is the paradigm shift that we have to have.
Unless we start to value water as a commodity, much like a stock, you buy stock at a cost, but you, in reality, invest in stock long term for the valuation that's going to come out of it. We haven't done that to water yet.
What's really interesting is looking at the intangibles, the things that we don't really put a value on. Human health. What is a great water supply worth to human health? The hidden costs of things, not just your water bill, but what it does for your health, the wildlife, fish resources, the birds you may go out and enjoy, those things aren't taken into account.
I think culturally, if you go back to Native Americans, where water had almost a spiritual characteristic, they had a perspective of value that was far greater than contemporary societies. The water itself was a part of their culture and a part of the development of their populations.
In an environment where water is a minimal resource, that becomes first and foremost as to how you're going to live, how you're going to sustain yourself. That's the foundation of all life. I talk to a lot of tourists who come out to the reservation and they're amazed at how we're able to survive out here. And generally, my response is, well, I don't survive out here. I live out here.
Water is our lifeblood. We are farming people, and so you depend on the rain, the moisture for your farming. And so because we're already in a water short area, we are constantly, our activities, the prayers that we make every day, everything that we do is with moisture to bring rain out here. So water is very sacred to us.
You simply have to look at what Hopi stands for. Hopi is a philosophy that is built around the theme of water, land, and all the blessings that are derived as a result of it. And Hopi simply functions religiously and culturally within this theme of water. The Hopi view of everything is something called forever.
They held water in high esteem, and they did not abuse it and misuse it as modern man does, because they did have a connection to it. Its value was much higher in early cultures. And over time, the citizens of the United States have disconnected from that value, and therefore, in a sense, water today is misused and abused by Americans because it has no value. And in Southern California alone, the effluent stream that goes in the Pacific Ocean is over 2 billion gallons a day. And this kind of behavior is not only permeating the United States, but it's been permeating the world as Western cultures expand throughout the world itself.
There are more than 6 billion people in the world today. Over half of them live in dense urban centers, which are almost all located near an ocean, a river, or a lake. By the year 2050, an additional 3 billion people will migrate to those same urban centers. In the last 50 years, the world's consumption of water nearly tripled, which was far beyond anyone's estimate. Today, there are 4.2 births every second, but only 1.7 deaths, which means a net gain of 2.5 new persons in the world every second. That comes to 150 new water consumers every minute, and there are 1,440 minutes in a day. That comes to 9,000 more people per hour, which is 216,000 more people per day, or 78.8 million more people in the world per year. With over half of the world's 6 billion people living in urban centers, it's important to understand the value of water in an urban watershed. 100 years ago was a simpler time, and a watershed was a simpler place. A body of water, or a wetlands, regularly restored by nature, and rarely disturbed by man, following a natural cycle that is millions of years old. But today's urban watershed has more to do with the hand of man than the hand of nature. What was a river is now a concrete-lined channel. What was open, uncultivated land is now a golf course or a park. Ponds and streams are now curbs and gutters carrying the stormwater and wastewater that runs off our streets and highways, our parking lots, and even our lawns. Technically, an urban watershed is an artificial environment that doesn't have a biological ecosystem and has difficulty adapting to change. Wherever they are in the world, from Tokyo to Paris, from Los Angeles to Alexandria, urban watersheds are strikingly similar, especially when seen from space, as in these satellite photos. Urban watersheds mark the locations of the world's economic engines in manufacturing, commerce, and agriculture. Ironically, while urban watersheds become more and more important to the world's economic and environmental well-being, they continue to be badly undervalued. We need to start thinking of water not just as one more commodity driven by supply and demand,
Excuse me, do you know how much...
but as a critical part of the complex mix of products and services and conditions that determine how well or how poorly we live.
If people don't see that there's a better value for water, they're not going to make investments that they need. We can accommodate a growing population in the future by conserving water that we're currently using to wash cars, or not have water available for swimming pools, or turn off fountains in periods of drought. But people will begin to miss those uses of water that they had in the past. If we can't appreciate the value of water in all of its uses, then we won't be willing to pay for new investments. And if we don't pay for new investments, we'll continue to lose some of those wonderful uses that have made the United States such an attractive place to be.
And I think you have to take a look at water as an asset that provides services that require investments to be maintained that have value to the public in the long term.
One way to value water, whether it's in the form of fresh water, wetlands, or stream restoration, is to treat it as an important part of the world's portfolio of natural resources, or natural capital, like trees, minerals, animals, and crops. Another way is to link water to the services it provides and the savings it creates. High-quality wetlands provide services far beyond their aesthetic value for flood control, wildlife habitat, and removing harmful nitrates from water supplies. One impressive example is the Tres Rios Wetlands in Phoenix, Arizona. Long before Phoenix was a city and Arizona was a state, the Salt River flowed freely through what's now called the Valley of the Sun. The Salt River was dammed in the early 1900s, turning it into an arid, rocky channel and making the entire area dependent on irrigation and treated wastewater. In recent years, the area's primary treatment facility was the 91st Avenue Wastewater Treatment Plant. In 1990, the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality issued tough new water quality standards that would have required over $600 million in upgrades to the 91st Avenue plant, none of which would have increased the plant's treatment capacity of 153 million gallons a day. The city of Phoenix and the neighboring cities of Mesa, Glendale, Scottsdale, and Tempe decided there had to be a better way. In 1994, the 5 cities partnered with the United States Bureau of Reclamation to build a demonstration wetlands near the 91st Avenue plant, using treated water from the plant itself. They called the project Trace Rios for the area's 3 rivers, the Salt, the Gila, and the Agua Fria. The project was designed to answer a number of questions. How effective could the natural biological processes in a wetland be in treating wastewater, especially in terms of the tough new standards? How large would a wetlands have to be to boost the treatment capacity of the 91st Avenue plant in a significant way? Could man-made wetlands become a refuge for the area's wildlife and an environmental asset for local residents? On all counts, the Tres Rios Wetlands Project has succeeded beyond anyone's expectations. The wetlands have increased the treatment efficiency and capacity of the 91st Avenue plant, while providing a new home for native plants and wildlife, from insects to burrowing owls, and has become an invaluable environmental resource for the entire region. The project has been so successful that a full-sized 800-acre wetlands is being planned that could accept the plant's entire daily discharge of 153 million gallons a day. What's the value of water at Tres Rios Wetlands? Hundreds of millions of dollars, and counting.
Economists have tried very hard in recent years to try to get people to tell us what the true value of water is. But it's tricky. You have to ask them how they value going fishing, and maybe by finding out how they value going fishing, you can figure out what the value of water is. But it's hard to figure out the value of water in all of its uses.
In some cases, the relationship between water and the economy can be surprisingly exact. The University of Maine conducted a study that examined the property values of shorefront homes on 34 lakes across the state. The study showed that the value of the lakeside properties was directly linked to the clarity of the lake. A decline of 1 meter in water clarity over 10 years represented a decline in property value of $3,000 to $9,000. A recent study by the National Parks Conservation Association estimated that the nation's 348 national parks generate $10.6 billion a year from park visitors and support some 212,000 jobs. Those numbers are directly linked to the availability of water that is swimmable and fishable, and most of all, clean. According to the U.S. Commission on Ocean Policy, the economic impact of the nation's coastal waters on the national economy is enormous, including $700 billion in goods handled in the nation's ports, $11 billion from the passenger cruise industry, $28 billion a year from the commercial fishing industry, $20 billion from saltwater recreational fishing, $25 to $40 billion from the offshore oil and gas industry, and billions of dollars in direct spending from hundreds of millions of domestic and international visitors to coastal areas, all of which supports millions of jobs across the country. Numbers like that are one reason why more and more businesses are becoming aware of the value of water and how it relates to their bottom line. Like Armco Steel in Kansas City, which uses 58 million gallons of water a day in its plant, but draws only 3.5 million a day from local water supplies, because it recycles its water at least 16 times. Understanding the value of water makes companies more competitive, more profitable, and greatly reduces the burden on the environment.
The business community has finally caught on to the fact that there is a nexus between their businesses, their people who work for them, and water.
Water may start out free, but by the time it reaches its destination, whether that means a clean room, an industrial plant, or your lips, major investments were made to produce and deliver it, and its real value may be far more than you ever imagined.
Do you know what this is worth?
Is this just water?
Yes.
Gee, kids, sorry, I don't know.
Thank you.
What is it worth to your children in the future? What would you be willing to pay to save some water for future generations? What are you willing to pay to keep water in the ground just in case we have a drought in the future? Water is a tricky, difficult, complicated resource in that you can take some of it for your own use. You can drink a bottle of water, but there are lots of uses that we share in common. We share recreational rivers and lakes and oceans, and people don't often have that same sense of responsibility for those kinds of collective or public goods.
I think we have to rethink the cost, price, and benefits of water. We have to throw into this an element called the value of water. And I think you have to take a look at water as an asset that provides services that require investments to be maintained that have value to the people who consume the water.
The consequences of not understanding the true value of water and making better decisions how to manage the resource is the costs for cleaning up polluted water supplies are greater, the lack of water in a drought, the ability to grow food effectively in places where it needs to be grown is going to be diminished. There's going to be wars over water, like it's going on in the Middle East. There's a lot of strife over water supplies. China, other growing countries have found huge shortages of water, and they won't be able to sustain themselves by growing food. So there's major consequences in the next 20, 30, 50 years worldwide for our lack of stewardship of our water resources.
Excuse me.
Hi, kids. How can we help you?
Do you know what this is worth?
Well, let me see that. Well, is it just a glass of water?
Yes.
Well, then actually I do. It may look like a glass of water, But what's in here is one of the most valuable things on Earth. You see, we can live without almost anything else, but we sure can't live without what's inside this glass. So, you know, I'd have to say it's priceless.
Wow, thanks.
You're welcome. Bye.
I told you.